I think it's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. This is the Granbury City Council regular meeting. It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, August 6, 2024. We are at Granbury City Hall, 116 West Bridge Street in Granbury, Texas. And you can watch this meeting live on www.granbury.org/live. And it is recorded for later viewing if you so choose. So we're called to order. I'd like to go ahead and have the invocation. And if Miss Diane Raspberry, the Home Community Church, will come, please stand, and we will stay standing for the pledge.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the privilege that we have to come together and to gather and to pray. Father, we thank you for these men and women that step forward to sacrifice their time to make decisions concerning our community. Father, we pray for their wisdom and their discernment. And Father, your word says that pray for the blessings and the prosperity of the city that you're in, because in its blessings and prosperity is yours. So tonight, Father, we pray for the blessings and prosperity over our community. We pray for those who live here. We pray for those that are here tonight. Father, we ask that you forgive us where we fall short. We ask that you forgive us when we do not treat our brothers and sisters the way that we should. But Father, we just lift up these prayers to you tonight. We thank you for the opportunity that we have. Father, we lay these prayers at your feet tonight, and we ask that you please answer these, Lord. And Father, we thank you for answered prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Join us in the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Move on to item number 3. City Council, City Manager issue encouraging statements and recognize city staff.
Mr. Mayor.
I was about to call on you. Go ahead, Mr. Over there.
I have two this evening. So I've got a shout out for Rick Crownover and the Public Works Department. Last Friday, I was at Visit Granbury's Rise and Grind, and the new YMCA director, Robin Schmidt, she made a point of the excellent service that she had received from the city of Granbury. Now, her background is in risk management, so she kind of looks at every issue from a risk management standpoint. And when she looked at all the students from Acton Middle School crossing James Road after school to get to the YMCA for all the after-school programs they offer, she saw a lot of risk because they were coming across up and down James Road. So she called Rick Crownover and asked for help, and she said within 48 hours the city had striped a new crosswalk and put up signs so students could cross the road more safely. So to Rick Crownover in the Public Works Department, I'd like to give a real great shout out. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the next one I've actually got a shout out for our mayor, Jim Jarrett. A week or so ago, I was in Mesquite for a Tex 21 meeting, and Tex 21 is the coalition that works to improve transportation infrastructure in Texas. So while I was there, Carolyn Mays, and Carolyn, excuse me, is the TxDOT Director of Planning. So she talked to me and she told me that Mayor Jarrett was responsible for a meeting with TxDOT to highlight the issues with Highway 377. Highway 377, if you're not aware, it's a 478-mile long road that goes all the way from Del Rio, Texas to Stroud, Oklahoma. So it runs the whole length of Texas. So up to that time, 377 was not really on TxDOT's radar. And the meeting with Mayor Jarrett got TxDOT's attention, and that's what resulted in a 377 corridor that will work on improving the roadway with an emphasis on safety. That includes, of course, the reconstruction of 377 here in Granbury, and that's probably going to be scheduled to begin sometime later in the part of 2025. So thank you to Mayor Jarrett for working hard to get TxDOT to put Highway 377 high on their list of projects to complete. Thank you, sir.
You went over your 3 minutes, but I've told this story a number of times. I'll tell it one more time, and it's very quick. I was in the office the first day that I came. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Chris Kaufman came down and said, you need to get involved with this group. So you should actually be thanking Mr. Kaufman. He volunteered me for something I had no idea what I was getting into. Thank you.
Well, what he didn't mention is I tried to get him to take my place on that board, and he didn't do it. So. But we're very excited. But also, y'all need to know, the public needs to know that TxDOT reached out. They're creating stakeholder study groups throughout the state, and for the North Texas area for 377, they've asked our mayor to be the chairman for that stakeholder group. So he'd be working with probably 40 or 50 cities in about 20 counties, so stakeholders in all those counties and cities. And so it's quite a privilege to have Jim step up and take that role and do it with passion. Him and the county judge personally went to Comanche, Texas to recruit them, to get them involved in the program as well. I'm not sure where all he's been up and down the highway meeting with councils, but Toller and Stephenville have been involved now because of this new coalition corridor. So hats off to you guys. While we're talking about good things going on, at our last council meeting, we had a citizen give us a complaint about some solid waste issues that she was having near her business, and that pertained to, again, the Public Works Department and the Street Department, the Solid Waste Department, I don't know which team it was that did the power washing. I think it was the Street Department, did steam power washing to get rid of the grease, and we got new dumpsters installed and new lighting by our electric department. So the gate's been repaired and cleaned up and painted, and it looks really good over behind Babe's at the garbage corral. How's that for celebrating something? A garbage corral. We're enthused about garbage. I've always said I'm Lord of the dumpster. That's it. So thank y'all for being a great team, and I get compliments on you guys all the time, and it just goes to show how much you care about what you do. So thank you.
It is. Thank you, guys. Others? No? Okay. Let's move on to public comments, and these would be comments regarding agenda items that are not listed as public hearing, and we have a few of those tonight. Public hearing comments will be recognized when the public hearing is open. See, I have two, but nothing yet. Good. Yeah. Okay. We'll move to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda, routine or previously discussed, will be approved with one motion. However, should a member of the City Council wish to discuss any item, said item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered under the deliberation agenda. Council, you've had an opportunity to look at all of this. Anything that you'd like to pull off? No? Okay. And I might note that we are short Councilman Eddie Rodriguez tonight. He is ill, but we wish him well, and I'm sure he'll be recovered shortly. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Wadley?
Second.
Second by Mr. Oberdeer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. That passes 5-0. Okay. We'll move right along to the deliberation agenda. 7.1 is to consider awarding J. Mills Contracting, Inc. for street improvement projects for Kalinko Drive and Old Acton Highway, and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract in the amount not to exceed $1.3 million for concrete paving of Kalinko Drive and seal coat for Old Acton Highway. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We do have Chris Hay, our engineer for this project here. I'll let him go through this, but I'll just tell you, when he wrote his memo for the packet, I wasn't in the meeting when they opened the bids, and when I got home, we compared the price and thought we would make a recommendation to you to, since I found the money to do it in the bond funds, it would be a better investment in the long haul to do Kalinko Drive and those two short streets with the cul-de-sacs with concrete instead of reconstruction with asphalt. Chris, you might want to add some color to that and help me out since you've been in the trenches with this project the whole time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We did open bids on July 25th for this project. It was bid with a base bid for asphalt pavement on Clinco Drive and the two cross streets associated with that. We also had an alternate bid, which is essentially a concrete option to replace the base bid. And then we added, via addendum, an additive alternate bid to incorporate the seal coat job for the Old Acton Highway project. So that's the three options that you see on the bid tab, if you have that in front of you. J Mills Contracting was the only contractor that bid on it. We've worked with them in the past, and they've worked on multiple projects with the city in the past. So we don't have an issue recommending them for award of the project. The main discussion point tonight is really whether you want to award it as asphalt or concrete, which is the base bid or the alternate bid. I do encourage awarding either the base bid plus the additive alternate bid, which is the Old Acton Highway project, or the alternate bid plus the additive alternate bid. There's about a $312,000 difference between asphalt and concrete options based on the base bid and the alternate bid. So it is a higher cost, but those are the options before you tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or expand on anything as needed.
Mayor. Thank you, Chris. Chris, what's the life of a road with concrete versus asphalt?
When you look at TxDOT, I think typically when they do a life cycle analysis between the two, they'll use 20 years for asphalt and 30 years for concrete. That'll vary depending on the maintenance done to an asphalt street. So that could go up and down, but typically when you do a life cycle cost analysis, the concrete overall, especially at the prices that you see on the bid tab in front of you, the concrete will be cheaper over the overall life cycle cost of the analysis.
I'm familiar with that road. As you come out Plaza, most people turn right, go up to Harbor Lakes and go up that way. But that road, I don't live down there, but I don't think that road is really a cut through. So I think the traffic that's up and down that road, because you've got two cul-de-sacs that jut off of that road, are really for residents. So I don't, I think that, the life of that road should last, quite a while, depending on what option we go with or what we're going to use. So, okay, thanks, Chris.
Mayor, I might just add that the road that we just repaved 2 years ago over off of Meadows Drive. I can't remember the name of it. It's something Meadows. It goes up to the elementary school. I was driving by it, and we've already got some pavement failing at the stop sign there. So it's very frustrating, as I've communicated over and over, that the base, we completely reconstructed that street, and we've already got a failure there. So that's one of the things I thought that would lean me towards recommending the concrete to you. You drive down Water's Edge Drive, it's concrete. You drive around in some parts of town over here around City Hall, it's concrete.
Right.
Travis Street has been repaved twice since I've been here in 9 years, and it's because of the base failure, and it's because there's moisture under that street from a spring or something that causes it to fail. The ultimate cure for base failure is to have a better base and a better surface. So I think it's wise money invested. So that's
I was going to say, when I was working out of the airport all those years, I think we had a lot of work done, and they actually came back. It wasn't too long after that, even the areas that they did, they dug it all up and made sure the base looked good, put the asphalt back down, and within a short period of time, it had alligator back on it, and it had water in it, and then we got a freeze, and it busted all up again, and certainly at the airport, that's critical. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Corrigan?
We have, you said you were able to pull the additional funds for the alternative bid, but what we're asking for is the alternative bid plus the additive alternative? Okay.
The seal coat and the concrete street paving.
Okay, and the funds are available for both?
Yes, sir. We've got them in your memo there on the cover page.
Thank you.
And that encompasses the 1.3 million.
Yes, sir.
All right, so it's,
And that's got us about $15,000 in case there's something that needs to be addressed extra there as a contingency.
Yeah, if you look at the, just to summarize the total, if you were going to go with the asphalt option plus the additive alternate bid, the total contract price would be $944,729. If you go with the concrete option plus the Acton Highway additive alternate, it'd be $1,256,849. So based on the way the agenda is written, up to 1.3 million, you'd have about $43,000 of contingency in that to play with.
Mayor,
yes, Mr. Vale.
I'll just make one other comment. You know, at our budget workshop, we talked a lot about roads. We spend $1 million a year on our roads currently. I know I had a discussion during the budget workshop about spending $2 million a year, but I think, you know, that discussion then morphed into looking at a potential bigger initiative around our roads. So it seems like we just can't seem to catch up. And, you know, I guess my concern somewhat is if we put asphalt down, even before we get to some other roads that I know need to be done, probably fairly soon, or if not now, you know, we're going to have some challenges with this road down the road, and then, no pun intended, we're going to be back at it again. So, you know, I think, to me personally, the concrete option is certainly a better one from a long-term perspective.
Sounds like a motion.
Yeah, could you make that into a motion?
See if there's other discussions.
Doesn't appear to be yet.
Okay.
Okay. You going to make a motion?
Sure. Mayor, I'll make a motion to award the J. Mills Contracting for street improvement projects for Kalinko Drive and Old Acton Highway, and authorize the city manager to execute a contract in the amount not to exceed $1.3 million for concrete paving of Kalinko Drive and seal coat for Old Acton Highway.
Second.
Mr. Obermeyer seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. That will pass 5-0.
Chris.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items will be public hearings. We will have the public hearing. I'll call or read the adoption or the consider adoption, and then call on staff to present. And then after that, I'll call for the public hearing, if that works for everyone. Okay. 7.2, public hearing is consider adopting ordinance number 24-40, approving the request of Galen Douglas petition for voluntary annexation of 1.118 acres, platted as Lot 1R, Block 5 of the Shores Edition, located at 105 Bahama Court. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor. In your packet, you've got an illustration of that in the location map. I'll turn it over to our Director of Community Development, Kara Wally, to walk you through this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. This is a voluntary annexation. The applicant requests they came to the city with a proposal for development of this existing single lot to place residential single-family development on that property, creating 2 lots. And the situation that caused a proposal for annexation was the need for a septic, and the county requirements for septic is a 1-acre lot size. The site is a little over an acre, and the 2 lots would be about half, one and the other. So with the city, you can have a septic on a half an acre, which the sites would qualify to be. And we also have committed a development agreement as part of the moratorium. The annexation is included. So proposing to annex as R12, which fits the proposed lot sizes, and staff recommends approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I'm not sure what happened, but maybe we just have a blank slide there. Yeah. Oops. I'm so sorry. Let me get this back over here to this slide. We'll just finish on that one. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Kara. So this project, you're well aware of, we issued a development agreement so they can move forward with the platting process for this. And part of that requirement is that we need to have it annexed into the city. It is contiguous to the city limits. They're on Highway 377. The rest of that subdivision is a donut hole within our city limits that is in the county. So it'll be kind of fresh to get something annexed over there, I guess. So, but we are trying to accommodate this development of this vacant land, and obviously it's been sitting vacant for many decades, and it's an opportunity to see two homes. I believe it's a family, the mom and dad in one home and the daughter in the other home. So they're going to be neighbors. And anyway, that's where we're at. It's your pleasure. Any questions?
Other question? Any comments? Do I hear a motion to approve the ordinance? Oh, it is public hearing. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak on this item? Okay. I see no one rising or raising their hands, so I will close the public hearing. Now do I hear a motion to approve the ordinance? Mr. Corrigan?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wadley seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Before you take this off of the field, I hear no nays. Before you take this off, I just want you to notice the traffic on Highway 377 going east. I don't know what's going on going west here, but the lights. Okay. That motion will pass 5-0. Thank you. Okay. We'll move to 7.3.
That must have been Craig.
This is also a public hearing, and we're going to consider adopting ordinance number 2425 and ordinance number 2426, approving the request of the City of Granbury to amend select sections of the City of Granbury zoning ordinance, Article 1, General Provisions, Article 2, Administration, Article 3, Nonconformities, Article 4, Permitted Uses, Article 5, Districts, Article 6, Special Districts, Article 7, Sign Requirements, Article 8, Landscape Requirements, Article 9, Wireless Antenna Facilities Regulations, Article 11, Supplementary District Regulations, Article 12, General Definitions, Article 13, Tree Preservation Requirements, Article 14, Drilling Regulations, Oil and Gas Production, and add Article 3.22 to Chapter 3, Building Regulations in the City Code. The general purpose is for consolidation of requirements, ease of implementation, readability, and usability of the regulatory document related to landscaping. This has been a long-awaited ordinance consideration. Mr. Kaufman? Go ahead.
Before
Did
we
you
get
want-
started, Kara, on the notice, on the agenda item as read, the ordinance numbers are different than the ordinance numbers in the attachments. So we need to work that out, Carla, before we vote on this tonight. Make sure we say the right numbers in relation to the ordinance number. So I'm assuming the ordinance number is correct and the wordsmithing is incorrect?
The item reads is correct.
Oh, the agenda item? Okay. All right. Very good. So we been working on this for quite some time. We've had Craig Farmer, our consultant, working with us behind the scenes to spend the due diligence and the time needed to revise these 20-plus-year-old ordinances that we have. And it's really in response to the public's demands of demands for development standards to be changed. And I think we've been responsive. He's conducted stakeholder meetings with various folks that have developed in the city, took in their advice. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Craig Farmer to fill us in on this. As you know, we tabled this 60 days ago to be here tonight to give us a little more time to fine tune it. So go ahead, Mr. Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman, Mayor, Members of Council, Craig Farmer, Municipal Planning Services, LLC.
Press the burn orange button. Okay. Anyway, it seems complicated what we're looking at. Well, maybe it is complicated. Okay. we've got a public hearing on two different ordinances. Well, let me see if I can get to the right slides. I'm missing a bunch of them. Let's see if they're at the end. Yes. No. Okay. All right, so the first ordinance, which as I understand it, is actually ordinance number 25, even though the written document says 26 on it. This is your zoning ordinance, and we're proposing, oops, wrong one. Got too many things going. So the ordinance number 24-25 is going to amend certain select sections of the zoning ordinance, and 24-26 is creating a new Article 3.22 landscaping in Chapter 3 buildings of the Code of Ordinances. First off, on the zoning ordinance, ordinance number 24-25, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, which is a table of permitted uses, 6, 7, which I believe is a sign ordinance, 9, 11, which is wireless, I believe, and 14. None of those were amended. We put the notice out originally for those chapters, thinking there might be some landscaping items in them. It turned out after analysis there weren't, but the notice still included it, so your agenda caption does. So none of those articles from your zoning ordinance were changed. Article 5 is your list of districts, and each district was amended, so it now where it used to refer to landscaping in certain sections in the zoning, it just says now landscaping's got to be done according to Article 3.22, just cross-reference. Article 8, landscape requirements, was moved almost in its entirety to Article 3.22, except for a small paragraph coordinating and pointing people to that ordinance. Article 12, general definitions, we moved all the landscaping definitions out of zoning and put them into Article 3.22 in the building chapter. There is a reference in that ordinance saying if something's not defined in the zoning ordinance, we'll have the definition. Article 13 is the tree preservation requirements, and again, that was moved entirely to this Article 3.22. The ordinance is pretty long. We could spend a lot of time in it, but if you look closely, everything's a strikeout except for a few paragraphs. So I think we'll move right on to the next ordinance, unless there's a question on ordinance 24.25.
I just think it'd be important for not only council to be reminded, but the citizens here, that by removing it from the zoning ordinance, if there's an appeal or a variance sought, it goes through the Planning and Zoning Commission and then ultimately to the City Council, like some of you all have asked. And then if it stays in the zoning and needs a variance, then it would go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and then an appeal for that would go to the district court. So we're softening this to where you can handle it in-house instead of sending them our way or the highway to the court system. So I think that was a big change that y'all had directed us to do, and I didn't want this opportunity to go unnoticed. That this is a big change. Taking this out of the zoning ordinance and putting it into the building standards changes the dichotomy of what we do here. So
there's actually a couple other benefits, and I'm glad you raised that. Because it's not in the zoning ordinance, obviously there's been some substantial amendments to this ordinance. It's real simple to fix it because you don't have to put a notice in the newspaper and all the legal requirements because it's not zoning. It's in that building chapter. That makes it very easy to fix and amend as time goes on. The second item is the legislature's been picking on zoning quite a bit lately and going into certain chapters of zoning ordinances and preempting the city's ability to do things. This won't be in the zoning ordinance anymore. So there's quite a few cities that are looking at moving things like parking and other things out of zoning so they don't fall under some of those legislative changes that are coming around. And it helps streamline it at the time of building permit also. So, oops, I'm doing it again. Too many things going on. In regards to the chapter 3.22, We created a new Article 3.22 Landscape Regulations to Chapter 3 Building Regulations. And as mentioned, the general purpose was to consolidate all the requirements. Your old ordinance, zoning ordinance, actually had trees in one chapter and landscaping in another, and it was quite obvious that there had been one of the ordinances had been copied somewhere else and pasted in there because there was no coordination. So you had trees actually being covered in two different places, and it was very confusing. So all that's been simplified and streamlined, much more readable now. Now I can do it. So the first thing that you'll see in here that has not been seen before, and the Planning and Zoning Commission didn't see this, but Ms. Wowie pointed out that it was getting very confusing, all these regulations, and she developed this table. I modified it and adapted it and added to it, but it covers all the different regulations in one table, and then it references back to the section where the actual requirement is. So, you know, land use is across the top, so you got single-family patio homes and townhomes, and the ordinance was amended to say you don't have to landscape a single-family residence other than enough for erosion control and drainage runoff. You have to put a certain amount in there to protect it, but that's the extent of it in this ordinance. Multifamily used to be 20% of the total land area, and it's remained the same. Everything else, public, retail, industrial, non-residential, is 10% of the total land area. So that's been cut in half from 20% to 10% right off the bat. Your old ordinance had an extensive system. They basically required 20%, and then they had a credit system, so every shrub you planted, every bush you planted, got you a certain credit against the 20%, and if you planted enough of this and that, and you met the formulas, you could get it down to 10%. Most ordinances I deal with, they just tell you up front, it's got to be a certain percentage, and that was my recommendation to simplify this. So the number was reduced from 20% to 10%. That also cut the number of trees in half, because your tree requirement down there towards the middle is one tree per 1,000 square feet of landscaped area. So when you cut the landscaped area in half, you cut the number of required trees in half on a site right at the start. Hose bibs under irrigation systems required are allowed in single family. You don't have to install underground irrigation system. Other areas do have to, multifamily and commercial areas, industrial, they do have to require install irrigation systems, but there's a process where the building official or the director of community development can allow a hose bib on some smaller sites that may not have a lot of landscaping. Also, artificial plants, turf, grass, field turf are now allowed. So in a single-family residential area, you could put down field turf for your landscaping, as long as it controlled runoff and erosion. In the commercial and other areas, it's not allowed, but there's a process where it can be allowed. You just have to sit down with the building official or the community development director and make sure that it's installed correctly. You can't just go buy some AstroTurf in a roll and just lay it on the ground. There's an installation process, so it is provided for. It goes on and covers all the other area requirements. I won't go into those, but I think this is going to be very handy. The industrial areas I mentioned, that's been reduced from 20% to 10%, but it's more than that. It also is only the front yard. So side yards and backyard, you don't have to landscape that. So all you have to do is 10% of the area in front of the main building, in front of the buildings. If you side up to a street, it requires landscaping between the building and the street on the side, or if you back up to it. But you can put up a screening fence as long as you landscape the right of way. And so I think that'll help your industrial areas substantially on those things. So we just talked about that. So I mentioned irrigation system and hose bibs are allowed. In commercial areas, it's for, smaller applications, and that has to get us approval by either the building official or community development director. But also, individual homeowners can install their own irrigation systems now. Before, you had to have a licensed irrigator. There is some state statutes as to who can design and install irrigation systems, so we've coordinated this with that. A homeowner can install their own, but they got to get a permit and give a set of plans to the city to make sure it meets the state requirements. The old requirement was it had to be a licensed irrigator, and we added or other qualified professional acceptable, subject to state licensing statutes. Again, that's on the commercial, multifamily, industrial. But again, a homeowner can design their own irrigation system, also design it and install it. So we're making sure that's real clear. That's in two different sections in the ordinance, but we coordinated them. We spent quite a bit of time on non-conforming sites because in the stakeholder meetings that was a big issue. Someone buys a property or gets annexed, and then suddenly the landscaping ordinance kicks in and causes them all kinds of problems. We're making sure that as long as you're just occupying it, you're non-conforming just like you would be in zoning, and you can keep operating the business. You can change between uses that don't increase the size of the structure or the parking lot. And in any expansions or reconfiguration of parking areas, the structures, or the use areas for outdoor uses does come under that section 3.22.12, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But we've substantially reduced the nonconforming problem to where a person can occupy a building and operate without having to landscape the ordinances. We were asked to look at water conservation and xeriscape, and so this is just the purpose section about Granbury is located in an area of Texas prone to droughts and water conservation, and it sets up the purposes. There's about 8 line items after that talking about xeriscape and how it's encouraged. The problem with defining xeriscape is that it has xeriscape too. It's got some live materials and it's got some rock. The ordinance actually has a definition I found in my research for xeroscape, spelled Z-E-R-O, which is if that's just rock and inert materials. The ordinance does not allow that. It says you got to have some shrubs or something to actually qualify as xeriscape, and it has some parameters. Mulch is a great. It's not, a lot of times it's not considered xeriscape, but it's great for keeping heat reduction down, and obviously the water usage by mulch is not much. So there's options in there. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, one of the commissioners pointed out that there's a state statute that for homeowners associations, and we made that amendment, and when they approved it. So it just paraphrases the state statute and references you back to the state statute. But homeowners associations have certain rights to go ahead and regulate. They can require certain planting materials and various other things. There's some things they can't do, and again, this picks up on those too. So we coordinated very closely with the state law to paraphrase it. Landscaping credits, well, I'm not keeping up on that one, am I? My goodness. That was, I'm sorry, that was the xeriscape. I was looking at my own. It's a good thing I'm not chewing gum. Okay, the landscape area credit. Previously, you had a lot of credits for the preservation of trees, but you were also required to preserve trees. There are no requirements now to preserve a tree in this ordinance. However, there's a substantial credit for each 6-inch or larger tree on the approved tree list that is protected and you keep it on your site. So for every tree you knock down, you probably lose, on a 6-inch caliper tree, you're probably losing $2,000 or $3,000 every time you knock a tree down. So you need to think about these tree credits. It's in addition to the cost of the tree, you have 800 square, if you preserve the tree, protect the tree, it reduces your square footage you have to landscape by 800 square feet. So that adds up when it's talking about usable square footage of a site. You can't use these credits and get more than 50% of a site. At some point, you're going to have to landscape it. The Xeriscape there also talks about the trees. For each tree you plant that's water conserving, drought tolerant, a local variety, you get a 200 square foot credit. Xeriscape actually counts each square foot as 1.2 square feet, so that reduces it too for if you Xeriscape. And then if you landscape the right-of-way, the old ordinance said you only got a half a square foot credit. It's our opinion that if you're landscaping the right-of-way, you should get a full square foot credit for every square foot you landscape. So we've added that in there. Parking area requirements. This was a big issue. We've allowed, there's a certain number of required trees in parking lots. You can move up to half of them to the perimeter of the lot, as long as at least half of it overhangs the parking lot and provides some shade and cooling. D there, in lieu of shade trees, and again, Ms. Wowie pointed out that in Arizona, one of the big issues is heat. That's one of the reasons you landscape. In lieu of shade trees, awnings, either permanent or with permanent replaceable awning fabric mounted on permanent supports and framing, may be utilized to provide shade and reduce heat if approved. So it'll give you some credits towards that reduces your tree requirement. So you can use those instead of landscaping and trees. You've seen some of these at the car dealerships. They use them to protect the cars in hailstorms. They're actually pretty viable in that a lot of people will park in the shade at your shopping center. Okay, we redid the graphic substantially. I'll read these numbers to you, and this basically shows how the ordinance works. So if you have 67 parking spaces in a parking lot, you've got to have 6 landscaped islands. In other words, you've got to have one for each 12 spaces, all right? Generally, you're required to distribute the islands evenly throughout the parking lot. However, as it shows here in the graphic and also in the text, the end caps, that thing there on the left with the red circle on it, the end caps are the most important because that's for traffic. It defines your aisles, and that's more important than having islands in the middle of the rows. Generally, you're not supposed to have more than 12 spaces in a row without some kind of an island, or more than 24 spaces in a group without an island. But the ordinance allows the building official and the community development director to work with you to move them around to where it works best for your parking lot. So instead of mandating that you have to have an island exactly in that one spot. The total number of parking spaces is 67 in this case. That means you have to have 6 3-inch diameter breast height trees planted in the parking lot. Again, you can move some of those to the perimeter, and 6 trees from that parking lot is not as onerous as it used to be. And finally, the areas and islands located around the perimeter, but within the parking lot, that square footage is actually included, and they can count that as a parking island. So in the past, if it was outside the curb of the parking lot, you couldn't count it. So now we're counting half the trees. You can move them over there, and we're counting those corners and those driveway protection areas. And again, this is, you may want to tweak this as time goes on, as you see things happen, because Article 322 is in your building chapter. It's much easier to amend and fix as you go along with any problems that show up. Here's some of the wording. Again, we've talked about all these things, moving them around. That's the actual or the wording in the ordinance. We've talked about the landscape areas intruding. We covered that. Non-conforming landscaping. Now, this is in terms of both parking lots and also in terms of structures and use of land. So if it was lawful when you brought it, when it was annexed or when you built it, and either the ordinance was changed or you came under the city's ordinances, there's a date of an ordinance, and if you were built prior to that inside the city, then you're considered non-conforming, legal non-conforming. And if you were annexed and came under the rules, you're considered non-conforming. And it's the purpose of this section to make sure that landscaping ultimately requires the ordinance, but you also want to protect the rights of the person that owns the property too, in terms of how this was done. I'm doing it again, sorry about that. So parking lots with non-conforming landscaping, and we added these rules, and it also applies to it's not only the parking lot, but it's also the structure itself on a non-conforming parcel, or it's the area on a non-conforming parcel. So you may have a manufacturing plant with a parking lot that has no landscaping, and it was built prior to the ordinance, so it's considered non-conforming. As long as the use inside the building is similar to the old use, you don't have to do anything in the way of landscaping. If you expand the structure or if you expand the parking lot more than 10%, then you've got to basically meet the landscaping 10% of the landscaping requirements. 10% of the area has got to be landscaped. If it's expanded up to 50%, then you need to increase the landscaping to meet the requirements for up to 50% of the parking lot or property. And then finally, if a parking lot is expanded by more than 50% of the paved area, or the non-conforming structure is expanded by more than 50%, or the outside use is more than 50%, then you got to landscape and meet the requirements of the ordinance. So this is similar to how zoning works, and it will protect them. D there, I think, is good. The Director of Community Development can alter the irrigation requirement. I think it now says Director of Community Development and Building Official can alter the irrigation requirements so that existing parking lots do not have to be torn up to supply irrigation to islands. So, a new parking lot would have to put in underground irrigation to water some of those islands. If it's an existing parking lot and you're going to have to tear it up, then they can allow you to put a hose bib on the side of it and reach out to the islands. And then finally, the Director of Community Development, and again, building officials in the final version, can reduce the number of trees within a parking lot, or the requirement of trees to be placed within islands on already paved existing parking areas. Again, going back to a manufacturing plant that was non-conforming. That brings us to tree planting credits. The old ordinance would let you pay, it dealt in caliper inches. So if you needed trees, you could pay $125 a caliper inch. We have amended that to say, if you have a problem planting trees for some reason, can't meet the requirement, you have the option of paying $375, which is the old $125 per caliper inch, but these are 3-inch minimum trees, so that's where $375 comes from. You can pay into a fund to reduce the number of trees to be planted, and then the funds go into a tree fund collected by the city to plant trees. So this is an option if you're really upset about trees and what it's doing to your property. You can meet this requirement. And again, I'm sorry, it's the next one coming up. Some of the other items that are mentioned in your ordinance, we created an administrative modification. It's not a variance because that confuses people with zoning. The building official or the community development director can modify a requirement by up to 10%. If it's a minimum, they could make it 10% less than that. If it's a maximum, they can make it 10% more than that, depending on the item. But This gives some flexibility. 10% of the trees, again, if there's a problem, one of those two officials can reduce the number of trees required in a parking lot by 10%, or on a site by 10%. There are no tree surveys required anymore, since tree protection is voluntary. I mean, you would protect a tree, well, just because you want to or because you want the credit, but there's no requirement to leave a tree. So if you don't have a requirement to leave a tree, then you don't need a tree survey showing where all the trees are and which ones came down. You had a thing called a tree conservation plan, a TCP, which is real complicated. That whole section's been removed also, so there's no tree protection plan. There are tree protection standards to be implemented. If you're going to get a credit for a tree, you've got to put, a fence around it and protect the drip line and do all the proper things. But if you're just, obviously if you're tearing them down or doing something like that, then it's not required. You can now show those voluntarily protected trees, the ones you want to get a credit for, the ones you just want to save. You can show it on the site plan for the building or even on an aerial photograph with just a note as to the variety and size of it. And then finally, there were numerous clarifications and modifications to streamline the process. I can answer questions. It's a substantial change. Again, you'll find some things that might be too tough or might be too lenient. You may want to amend it. It's very easy to do now that it's in the building chapter. You don't have to go through the requirements that we had under zoning. So, a possible motion to approve if the council's so inclined, and I'm glad to answer questions after this. Item number 1 would be easy, except that it's ordinance number 24-25, as the city secretary said. Adopt ordinance number 24-25 to amend select sections of the City of Granbury zoning ordinance as presented, subject to any amendments that y'all want here in this meeting. A second motion to approve, if you don't combine them, is to adopt ordinance 24-26 to add a new Article 3.22 landscape regulations to Chapter 3 building regulations in the city code as presented, subject to the following amendments. In order to make it easier for you, we left a table of contents in the package you got, and we also left a list of some of the significant changes. Both those need to be deleted. So delete in the final ordinance the table of contents, significant changes list. I think you automatically remove the page numbers and the footer as part of the codification process. And then if there's any typing errors, correct those. And then if there's any additional council amendments, add that to that motion. I'll be glad to answer any questions, help clarify. I probably over-clarified, but this is pretty radical changes, so but I think they're in the right direction. It's going to make it a lot easier to administer the ordinance.
Thank you, Craig. As he just said, this is certainly an aggressive position. As y'all well know, you addressed the plating bureaucratic process in the past 6 months, and we've streamlined that. Some of the cases where we're able to administratively approve those, and it has reduced the workload and the time restraints placed on developers as well by up to 2 months. So with this new change that will streamline even more without more meetings, more public notices being mailed out, just a totally new administrative process, which is streamlined and quicker and friendlier to the developing public. And so staff recommends these changes.
Council, do you have questions for any staff?
Mayor.
You want to go back to slide 1, Mr. Vale? Is it?
Yeah, Craig, if you could repeat
Yes,
everything.
Mr. Vale.
Hey, Craig, thank you. It's been a lot of work here the last 60 days to get us to this point. Which developers and community leaders were part of this process that was in the discussion in the cover sheet? So as we look to put all this together, which people did we bring in to help put this together?
I'm going to have to go by memory because it's been a while. We had a small meeting at the chamber offices with about 4 home builders, if I recall, / realtors, and I'm not even recalling their names, so I can get to the list. And we went through it pretty extensively. I did phone calls to all the council members. I visited with the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I didn't phone call each one of them. I want to say I talked to Steve Hawkins on the phone and some others. Mr. Kaufman was good about giving me people's names that were kind of irritated by the ordinance, and I think I got hold of the majority of those, but I'd have to go back and look at the names.
Okay.
It wasn't my normal stakeholder kind of a thing, with big town hall meetings and things. The budget was limited and the time frame was limited, so, and I could see serious problems from the very get-go. But I think the meetings verified my opinions on quite a few of the things, like why is the ordinance
Okay.
so complicated?
Yeah, I might also add to that the Chamber of Commerce invited me to one of their board meetings and expressed their desire to create a committee to basically do everything that Craig has done on our behalf, but in more of a aggressive, hostile type environment. And so I think that when I told them we had already engaged Craig and that he would be reaching out to them, it settled some contention there and got us to be able to sit down in the room together and work together as Craig and staff met with those people and listen to their comments. I think that was a big part of it, is listening to what the developing community had to say. For so long, we've been branded as the development blocking organization, and I think one of the developers that's here tonight gave me that term, but it reminded me of the long battle that he's had in the community for decades to be able to develop in a timely manner. And when you're borrowing money, time is money, and I think that we've really put together a good package here to streamline it and listen to the developing public as well. And I think that I see Mr. Strevey out there with Baird Hampton Brown. He's probably shocked at some of these changes because it's going to change his world to make it so much easier. And plus the previous changes for the administrative approvals for plats. And so, hats off to you, council, for allowing us to engage Mr. Farmer and to be patient. And he had some health issues in the middle of all this. We're happy to have him here standing with us tonight.
Upright, yes, sir.
It was kind of touch and go, I think. So we're glad to have you with us. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I would just say that, I had the opportunity, like Skip did, to serve on P&Z for 3 years before having the opportunity to serve here on City Council. Richard Hafes in the audience tonight, who currently serves on P&Z. I just think it's very important that as we develop these ordinances that we have the stakeholders involved, because at the end of the day, we're serving the community. And I think we need to make sure that we're getting the right community input. And as Chris mentioned, there's one other gentleman here tonight who I saw leave a little early, and he's been through the process as well. So I think that, we want to make sure that we're preserving our, landscape in the community. We're preserving what we think is the right direction for the community and for the city. But at the same time, how do we come up with things that are more reasonable, that we can work with our developers and get to a point where we want to help them achieve their objective, build the project, and be successful while maintaining some standards within the city and our community. And I think we did a really good job of that when we did the noise ordinance. We had a lot of stakeholders in when we put that together, and at the end of the day, everybody was very pleased with the outcome, and I think it served the community and the city very well. I would just say that I think this creates the right simplicity that we need, gives the developer, some more clear direction, and it gives our staff some more latitude that we really didn't have before. And I think one of the keys in there, as Chris mentioned earlier, is moving it from the zoning ordinance into the city code chapter 3 building regulations. And I think even as we move forward from tonight, and there's a lot of stuff in here, I was looking at, eyes out, there's, there's a lot of information to take in here. And there may be some things down the road as you implement any new process or there may be some things that we want to change down the road, and we certainly have a better opportunity to do that in-house, as you pointed out at the beginning. So I think this puts us really back where we need to be, takes out a little bit of the state control, which we've all had a bunch of issues coming from, unfortunately, from Austin that's dictated how we do business here that is not in our best interest. So thanks for all your hard work, and I know the staff's put a lot of hard work into getting us to where we are here tonight.
Okay. Council, go ahead.
I forgot to mention, Ms. Wowie and I developed a list of 9 comparable cities to Granbury and Benbrook, Weatherford, Willow Park, Stephen Mill. I'm trying to remember some of the others, Keller. Just called them size-wise and just to look at it. Your ordinance, I reviewed and analyzed it against those cities. Your ordinance was one of the toughest of all of them. I would say now that, these ordinances come in what I call ranges, and I think you've gone from being the toughest to probably one of the more lenient ones at this point.
Flexible.
Flexible, yes, sir, absolutely. And that's why, but that's why I do think that, as time goes on and you see projects come in, if it needs tweaking, I'm famous for saying these things don't come down from the mountain on stone tablets. You need to fix it as you go, and that way you won't have to hire me again, so.
Council, other questions? I'm going to open, go ahead, Mr. Corrigan.
No, just real quick, just piggybacking off of what has already been said. When I was reviewing these and we'd had the conversation earlier, I was thinking back to when I was on the Zoning Board of Adjustments, and we spent almost an hour and a half having an argument over Saratoga and caliper trees. and it, because it wasn't explicit that we had the ability to make adjustments, we spent over an hour arguing on what our options were. And this gives not only the boards and staff the flexibility to make these adjustments on the fly as long as they fall within the parameters, but it also takes something that was almost a punishment to taking down certain trees of this caliper or this age or whatever the case may be, and takes it from a punishment and gives them a credit. So it's more of a benefit to them to keep certain trees of certain age and caliper and standards and so on and so forth, instead of punishing the developer for cutting certain things down. And we're talking about like the tree surveys. We've set up here and voted on developments that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on tree surveys to find that in a 10-acre tract there's maybe 20 trees that were worth looking at, and everything else is a mesquite that's going to get taken down anyways. So allowing the developers those flexibilities, and the staff and the boards and just everyone involved to streamline the process, as we said. I think I really appreciate the time and the effort that you guys have put into it to make what we have today. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Staff? I'm going to go ahead and open the public comments. If we have anyone that would like to speak on this matter. See. Yes, sir.
30 days after it's published.
I'm right in the middle of it.
All right. Any other public comments? I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment meeting. And I want to clarify again, is this 24?
That's 25 and 20. Oh, yes, 24, 25.
Okay, so the first one's 25,
25,
24, 26. Okay,
Yes,
all right. So we have two motions here. We'll handle them separately. So do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 24-25 to amend select sections of the City of Granbury zoning ordinance as presented?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Vale, a second by Mr. Corrigan. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Because no one says nay, that would be passing 5-0. The next one is, do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 2426 to add a new Article 3.22, landscape regulations, to Chapter 3, building regulations, in the city code as presented, subject to the following amendments: deletion and final ordinance of the table of contents and significant change list, and correction of any typing errors. And I've heard no other additional amendments. There would be no other additional amendments, correct? Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Corrigan makes the motion, Mr. Oberdehr has seconded the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I hear no nays, so that ordinance will also pass 5-0. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your help. And all of those ordinances that you mentioned that you didn't get to, you'll be starting on those next, like the sign ordinance? Good, good. We'll continue making progress. This is progress. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, we're moved to public. This is a public hearing 2. We want to consider the request of Blackburn Ranches LLC to remove a 4.390 acre tract of the Milan County School Land Survey, abstract number 348, from interim holding to planned development like commercial. The property is located on the west corner of US Highway 377 and Pirate Drive, and I will comment that there will be no action taken on this tonight, as the item has been withdrawn by the applicant in correspondence dated July 24, 2024. But we did have a public notice, so we needed to mention it tonight. So there will be no action taken on this. 7.5 is to consider adopting ordinance number 24-41, approving the request of Phil Hope to amend a planned development multiple family zoning to planned development townhome zoning. Property is located at 1410 Crawford Avenue. Mr. Kaufman.
I'll turn this over to Ms. Wawi, and I believe the developer's here as well, and their engineer, so take it away, ma'am.
Thank you. So this slide shows the site outlined in teal. It's there on the north side of Crawford Avenue, about 6 acres in size. And this site was zoned planned development multifamily last fall. And the applicant is coming forward today with a proposal to convert that zoning to townhouse style development. The key difference being that with townhouse, the property owner owns the individual townhomes, whereas with multifamily, it's under single ownership and rental. So what you're going to see on the layout is much the same as that was presented previously. And this slide shows the zoning. As I stated, the current zoning is multifamily under a planned development, and the proposal is for a PD with townhome. The surrounding area is compatible. There's commercial development, strip shopping center with pad sites there to the south of Crawford, some offices, a little bit of vacant land, and there are multifamily developments towards the east and the west, as well as offices. This site is currently unimproved. This is our future land use plan map. There is no companion future land use amendment required. The site is existing high-density residential, and the zoning is compatible with that high-density residential. Again, the proposal is for townhome development. The property was granted a moratorium agreement associated with property for on-site sanitary sewer facility, and that's until the moratorium is released. The proposal includes variances to the zoning standards to allow variation to the typical development, and in this case, it balances greater height and achieves the permitted dwelling unit size on a smaller lot compared to the standard townhome district. In your packet, there's a site plan that shows the development table, and there's also a separate sheet that shows the development table, and that is specifically the variances requested. There are a number of variances requested. However, I want to remind that the project is very much the same as was proposed previously. So the height being 45 feet. The yard variances are because the townhome district is a little bit different from the multifamily district. So they need to request these side yard variances to 0, which reflects that the units are adjacent to one another. The rear yard is being reduced from 20 feet to 10 feet. Along many of the rear yards, there's open space or common area that is landscaped, and there are some areas where the common area is activated with paths and in particular up against the lake. I'll get to that here in a second. The lot area per each townhome is required at 2,500 square feet, and the reduction requested is 1,450. And the lot depth is also reduced there. That's on the bottom from 100 to 60 feet. The coverage required is 70% maximum. This request is at 85%. Of course, our city engineer reviews our projects when they come through and has satisfied their review, so that 85% has gone through that important review. Dwelling units and the roof pitch, our standard roof pitch is 412. They are proposing flat roofs 812 for the dwelling units. For 20% of the roof is 812. The remaining would be at that existing 412. And the roof pitch for the amenity area, also required at 412 pitch. The requested is 50% at 412 and the remaining at 812. So this is the site plan. It might be a little bit hard to read, but the pinkish orange color represent the individual units. And so you would access this property. Crawford is there at the bottom of the drawing and extends along the frontage of the property, and the lake is there at the top of the drawing. And the access to the site is one access for everyone at the Crawford area there in the center. And off of that, the drive goes towards the left to a shared parking area for guests for the entire community and wraps around in a loop fashion to the right and then up and then back to the left. And there's an emergency access drive at the farthest west end. So you can see how the homes fit in there. And then along the lake, there's amenities, and we'll show that in the landscaping plan in these next slides. But I want to show that in whole here because on the next slides it's broken into 3 pieces. So along the lake you would have a dock there at the left side of the drawing. It kind of looks like a hammer. And then the next piece of the amenity area connected through paths is a pool and pool house and activity area, and then a path that extends out towards the lake with some seating. The path goes on towards the right along the lake to a day dock, and beyond that to I call it a jetty. It's not a jetty, but kind of a point. And in that area, they would have a path with seating and a fire pit. So this is the landscape plan close to the west side of the property, and there's that kind of a hammer-looking dock. And the circles represent trees, shrubbery, bushes, and then the shaded area is ground cover. And then we continue on the point there with the fire pit and the seating and all the paths. And you can see how the paths and sidewalks connect through the remainder of the development. Next we have the elevations. So each one of these buildings has a number of units in it, and you can see the roof deck on the top has a flat roof, and some of it is pitched. It's fairly flat. This drawing represents the amenity area with the dock. And so these slides show on the upper side is the view from the lake. All of these are from the lake, and the lower left is another amenity area. And these are just based on representations of the proposed architecture. This slide shows the materials. The staff recommendation is inclusive of the site plan, landscape plan, elevations, as well as the representative materials. We provided public notice through the mail as well as in the newspaper. There were 13 items in the mail, and we received nothing back by letter, neither in favor nor in opposition to the request. Staff recommends approval of this proposal, subject to the conditions in the ordinance exhibit. The Planning Commission voted unanimously in favor of the proposal, also subject to conditions as presented by staff. And these are your voting options. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Council, do you have questions? Ms. Moe? Mr. Vail?
Mayor, so what we're voting on tonight is adopting the ordinance really to amend the plan development from multifamily to plan development townhome, right? So these townhomes are ownership, right? So you're buying the townhouse. Correct? Okay. So the major changes, just make sure I've got this right. So the major changes from the original proposal, there aren't any, is that right? The setbacks, okay.
Yes, setbacks.
Okay, so that's the change, really, just the setbacks?
That's the primary change.
Okay, primary change, okay. Okay, I happen to be a temporary resident next door. I mean, I walk by the property all the time. I mean, I think the drawings look very attractive, and I know they've been working on this for quite some time now, so thank you.
I'd like to clarify, on the ownership versus rental, we really, I mentioned that I probably shouldn't have, but the townhomes could be rented if an owner chose to.
I got you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question, Mayor, for Kara.
Sure.
Is there some flexibility built into this PD to where if they needed to move that boat dock one way or another to satisfy BRA at a later date, that we could do that, or are we going to have to come back and do something else? Is there something we could do to address that tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. That's a good question. I think that council could consider an additional condition allowing administrative modification of location of something like that. The BRA requires a different location, or if they don't permit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, that's probably a better way to.
So, do we have verbiage if we should choose to do that amendment, or do we do it tonight?
I think we should do it while we adopt the ordinance with the amendment, and just simply state that the placement of that dock is subject to the approval of the BRA, and that way if they need to have it moved to another place 20 feet down or 100 feet north or whatever, that we could do that without having to bring it back on the rotation, because that would be another posting notice for everybody within 200 feet, another waiting period, another 60 days of waiting to go through the public hearing process. So if we could put that in there in your verbal motion, I think we could codify that tomorrow and get that executed.
Okay. All right. Yes, Mr.
Kara,
Wadley?
is this still being planned as a pump and haul sewage situation until such time as the east wastewater plant is completed, or do they have other plans at this time?
That's correct. A pump and haul is what's proposed until the moratorium is lifted.
So that hasn't changed yet? Okay.
Other? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Does anyone want to speak to this? I see no hands, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And we have a motion here to consider adopting ordinance number 24-41, approving the request of Phil Hope to amend a planned development multifamily zoning to planned development townhome located 1410 Crawford Avenue. And do you have the verbal written there?
I do. Want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to consider adopting ordinance 2441, approving the request of Phil Hope to amend the plan development multifamily zoning to plan development townhome zoning located at 1410 Crawford Avenue with the amendment of the placement of the boat dock subject to approval by the Brazos River Authority.
I second that.
I have the motion from Mr. Vale. I have a second from Dr. Wadley. Good. I have the shaking of the head. Yes, from our attorney. So I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I hear no nays. That will pass 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, number 7.6. Consider adopting ordinance 24-42, approving the request of Frank Dale for an SUP to allow for the amusement center commercial outdoors use in a heavy commercial zoning. The property is located at 2440 East US Highway 377. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'll just preface that the Planning and Zoning Commission has done an awesome job preparing this agenda for us. They've looked at all this, reviewed it. We need to give them more credit for the hard work they do, but Kira leads that group, and they're volunteers, and it's just pretty awesome that they plow through this stuff in meetings just like tonight with the same amount of time or more, and come up with the same conclusion. So I think it's great to recognize that. But with this project, Mr. Dale is looking to do an incredible project related to pickleball, and that was in some of my meet the city manager or visit with the city manager. That was a big topic and request, and so we'll turn it over to Kira to walk us through this proposal. And exciting to see somebody take a piece of property that's been needed to be developed for a long time and come up with a new plan. So I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Again, this is our location slide. The site is outlined in teal. The site is almost 5 acres in total area, and the request is an SUP for an amusement center, commercial outdoors. On the future slides that I'll be sharing with you, the site plan shows 3 different activity areas. This SUP is only for one of those activity areas, so I want you to really focus that this is for the outdoor activity, not the other components of the site plan. Surrounding this site to the north is a apartment complex, and to the south of 377 is retail, offices, a variety of other businesses. To the west is a landscape business, and then a retail office, and also there's a bowling area, a bowling alley. The zoning on this site is heavy commercial, which allows the proposed use under an SUP. The site to the north is interim holding, which, as a reminder, is a district that is temporary until further development. So it was annexed in, it had development on it, that development has never changed. And I need to go back just a second here. And the future land use plan for these properties that are commercial on the map are for heavy commercial types of development. So that would be the anticipated future for that property. This is our site plan, and the proposed development would replace the existing development. So the existing buildings on the site would be demolished and replaced with this pickleball facility. Access to the site would be from both Old Granbury Highway or Granbury Road and Highway 377. So that drive off of 377 would come in, circulate around the activity areas and provide access to parking, which is on the north side, as well as fronting towards 377, and then would access also back to Old Granbury Road. So that's a two-directional circulation. There is, towards the back, there's an area that is rectangular in a east-west fashion. That is a building for indoor pickleball. On the west side of the site plan is a rectangle that is intended for restaurant use. So those two pieces are not part of our SUP consideration. What is of consideration is the rectangle to the east and south of that overall square bounded by the driveway. I hope you're following me. That area is where the outdoor amusement pickleball facility will be. Those are 4 courts and will be covered with a canopy. The elevations are not part of your consideration, but I wanted to show you what that would look like. So there's the restaurant building on the left and the pickleball canopy on the right, which covers and protects those pickleball courts from the elements, so you'd have some shade from the sun. It also captures some of the potential noise that could come off of that, contains it to that area. And with specific use permits, we have considerations that are made, and this is a list, and generally these statements are, will the use be harmonious and compatible with surrounding uses? So as mentioned, the surrounding area is commercial in nature, and the use to the north there is intended as interim holding, and this kind of encourages those interim holding properties to convert to a more higher and best use. Are the activities requested by the applicant normally associated with the requested use? Yes, this is a proposed pickleball, and the activities are associated with that kind of use. Is the nature of the use reasonable? It appears that the use is reasonable. It's bounded on 2 major streets in an area with high volumes of traffic and commercial activities compatible, directly compatible, would be comparable to the bowling alley that's just down the street. Has any impact on surrounding area been mitigated? The approval or the proposal, we don't find that it necessarily has impacts on the surrounding area. There are some mitigating factors that appear to minimize the activity. The zoning ordinance also includes lighting requirements that shield lighting from other areas, and so that would be part of the review during permitting. And these are the regulations for specific use permits. The vicinity and the surrounding area are considered. The property zoned heavy commercial, and again located on a heavily traveled commercial business corridor, and there are businesses surrounding the property. The proposed use appears to be appropriate for this site in the general area. And the site is proposed to be redevelopment, which aids in the community's betterment. The conditions may be recommended and imposed, and those are in your packet. There are conditions. We'll get to those.
Okay.
Okay. Public notice was provided to 14 property owners through the mail, as well as provided in the news. And we have received 1 letter in favor and 1 letter in opposition to the request. Staff's recommendation is requirement of compliance with the site plan, Exhibit A. All parking, maneuvering, display, and storage must be on an improved hard surface. Fire lanes shall remain clear of obstructions at all times. The next 2 are standard conditions regarding code compliance and compliance with our city requirements and inspections. And staff has an additional condition. As you know, our standards require compliance with the exhibits that are submitted. There's a condition that we proposed that the driveway could be moved along 377 through administrative approval to address any required movements if so required by TxDOT. So that's our recommendation. Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval. Now staff added that last driveway condition, so they didn't see that, but it's for your consideration. And these are your voting options. I'd be happy to answer your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Council, do you have questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Oberdehr?
Kira, explain to me, we need an SUP for the outdoor pickleball courts, but we don't need an SUP for the indoor pickleball courts?
Correct.
And why is that?
Well, the ordinance is structured that way to protect the community if there are some concerns about any outdoor activities. There's greater impact perceived if there are outdoor activities compared to indoor activities.
Okay, and I guess there's not going to be any danger of the pickleball balls being out on 377?
We
Like
have
there's
not.
golf balls in my front yard.
We've not found that that'd be a consideration.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Mr. Dale?
The outdoor facility has a 6-foot chain link fence, black vinyl coated chain link fence around it with iron gates that open to it. So first, you couldn't get out to start with, but each court has a 48-inch gate around it so that the ball stays at the court. But even if you cleared that, it wouldn't get past the 6 foot. So.
Yes. Mr. Dale, if you would introduce yourself and
Yes, sir, I'm
give us your
sorry. I'm
address.
Frank Dale, and I'm trying to develop the thing, so.
All right. And we have here that you live at 2301 Vienna Drive, and we put that down simply.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you have
In
your
Harbor
phone
Lakes.
numbers of,
I would add, 4 days ago, we got conditional entrance approval from TxDOT. So
Oh.
it's
Excellent.
semi-approved. I still got to send them final civil and get the blessings and do all of that stuff, but I've got a conditional letter for it that I just gave them 3 days ago, so.
We've been very familiar with all that stuff.
TxDOT's a lot of fun.
Technical terms.
So that was a hurdle to get over.
Other questions for Mr. Dale?
Yeah,
Yes,
just
sir.
a couple of questions, Mayor. What are the hours of operation?
That's a really good question. Right now, we're thinking 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Weekends, maybe 11 or 12 o'clock. I need an hour flexibility on that. It kind of depends on what the clientele wants, but that's what we're going to try and do is 8 to 10 during the
Okay.
week.
And I'm sure you've thought through as well, if you've been around, and I know you have, been around multiple pickleball courts, it can be, there's some noise involved in that as well. So it looks like there's some things that you've developed along the way with the project to kind of minimize and mitigate some of that noise, it looks like?
Yes, sir, and the 4 outdoor courts are covered with a metal canopy. So the 2 benefits from that: one, it'll damper the sound to some. The second is I don't need what I would call stadium lights, lights that are up shining down at it that can also glare other. These will be directly down lights from that canopy, so you won't have.
Okay.
And they are 75, 80 feet off of 377, so they're
Okay.
a ways set. There's a parking lot in between.
Okay, that was another question I had for you. So I would just say, I haven't played pickleball yet. I know there's a lot of orthopedists in town that are probably appreciative of the sport. But, we've got another facility, which I know you already know about, up on 51. The YMCA has pickleball. I think we've got a person here up with us tonight who has somebody playing out at Pecan Plantation. So it's a growing sport. I had the opportunity, I think last year, to go to Seattle and take the ferry out to Bainbridge Island, and I was unaware that Bainbridge Island was the home of pickleball, which was started in 1965. So it's not a new sport. It's been around a long time, and we credit, I guess, a state senator, Pritchard, there for creating the game at his house. So I guess that's the pickleball, if you want to play at the Holy Grail, is out in Bainbridge, Washington. So I think that's all the questions I had.
Okay. Other?
Oh, that was an anecdotal.
Other?
It's been to echo what y'all have said earlier. It's been quite a challenge getting through TxDOT and the landscaping, and all of the staff's been great to work with. Yes, the standards are a lot tougher. I was a commercial builder in the Metroplex for 47 years, so I think we've built in like 52 different municipalities around the Metroplex, and Granbury was tough, but the staff is great. So my thanks to Jennifer and Angela and all those ladies.
Right.
So I'm glad to see the landscape thing cleaned up. That's a good deal.
Thank you. Do you need more developer feedback?
No,
Yeah.
it's just a anecdotal pickleball.
Good, okay.
Non-pickleball.
All right. Public meeting is still open, so any other questions for Mr. Dale? Mr. Dale, we thank you for coming. Appreciate it. I see no one else raising their hands, so I will close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion to adopt ordinance number 24-42 approving the request of Frank Dale for an SUP to allow for amusement center, commercial outdoors use in heavy commercial zoning?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? No? This includes the amendment, correct, to the 377, the driveway? That includes that. That's all in there, okay? All right. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I hear no nays, so that will pass 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Dale. What's pickleball? That's, yeah. Thanks.
I'll cover that.
We have, we'll move to 7.7, consider making an appointment to the Granbury Cultural Arts Commission to fill a vacant seat. I've had conversations with a couple of the Arts Commission folks, and they are excited. I mean, I know that we have a couple of Arts Commission people out here in the audience. They're excited about what's going on in the future, and they have requested, and this is just a request, but they requested that we delay this because it may be bigger and better, and maybe they need more than what we are asking for here tonight, and they'd like a little time to assess and see if if they need more members, and also the talent that the membership might have. It's a request. I can make that request. I can make a motion, or we can proceed right on with the agenda here.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
just for
Chair.
clarification, is the request to expand the number of members, or they want to provide more applicants for us to consider?
Yes.
Okay,
But-
so
Yes.
they want to add more members.
Yes. There is some restriction now on, in city, out of city, and we're maxing that at this point in time. And they felt they needed some more time. But, it's our appointment.
Okay.
I relayed the request is yes, more and more on both sides.
So,
More
okay.
in total and more individuals. to
Okay,
be-
so what would be the timing for them to get back to us and say, we want to put another item on the agenda, and we want to expand our board from X number of members to include 3 new or 2 new people, and for us to consider those applicants?
I'm not sure that we have a requirement on timing to do that. I asked the question, it needs to be, formalized, make sure that we have the right answer. But I understand it's not a pressing requirement that we add people or not add people at this point in time. We do it out of, expedience. We don't want any of the commissions running shorthanded for any period or for any long period of time. Mr. Wadley?
Well, I was just thinking if we have an open spot and we have applicants, they could always come back later and say they want to have more positions. We
That's
could
true.
still fill the position tonight if we wanted to, correct?
That's exactly right, yes.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, with that in mind then, I've known Allison Ulam, and she's one of the people that has applied for this. She's in Granbury Opera Guild with me, and she's actually the fundraising chairman for that organization. She's done a fantastic job for them. She's a lifelong resident of Granbury, and I think that she'd be a great addition to the Granbury Cultural Arts Commission. So I would make a motion to accept her as our nominee.
I have the motion.
I'll second that motion.
It's a nomination. I have a nomination. Okay. Okay. Are there other nominations? We have two other individuals that are qualified. Okay. No other nominations? No. So, should we elect or appoint Ms. Allison Holm by acclamation? Make a motion. I'm getting counsel here. I make a motion to appoint Allison Ullman to our Granbury Cultural Arts Commission.
Second.
Mr. O'Dare seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. There are 5 ayes and no nays. Ms. Ullman, welcome. Thank you. Okay. Thank. Set the date, time, and place for a public hearing to receive public input on the City of Granbury proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 annual operating budget. And I see each of you have the budget book at your desk here at the dais. And I encourage each and every one of you out there on watching online and in the audience that you can go online and pull this budget book up. It is a clear representation of where the money comes from and where the money gets spent. And thanks to our finance group, well, every group, but thanks to the finance group, the communications group in particular, on putting this document together. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As a matter of housekeeping, we do need to set the time, date, and place for a public hearing, and Ms. Gregory is here to walk us through that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. As Mr. Kaufman said, it is required by our local governmental code and our charter that the time, date, time, location is set for the public hearing for the budget. The budget was presented to you at the budget workshop on June 26th, and since then we finalized the operating budget, the proposed operating budget, based on the final certified values we received from the appraisal district, and it has been filed with the city secretary and submitted to you for review on July 31st. It's required that you receive the budget, the proposed budget, prior to August 1st, and it has to be filed in the city secretary's office prior to August 1st as well. The budget is available on the website, and the budget cannot be adopted until we have the public hearing. So at this time, you may consider voting for the date, time, and place to adopt the budget, which was proposed to you for September 3rd at a regular city council meeting.
I might add that we were also going to present at our next council meeting a summary of anything that's changed in that budget document since the budget workshop. So there's been some housekeeping things, like we voted to fund those that technology for the body cams for the police department. All that kind of stuff that's been in motion is going to be presented to you in a document at the next council meeting. So that's not what we're doing tonight. We're just setting a time, date, and a place for the budget public hearing. So that's all we're doing. And adoption.
So, do I, go ahead. Okay. Do I hear a motion to set the date as September 3rd at 6 p.m. at the regular Granbury City Council meeting at 116 West Bridge Street to have the public hearing to receive public input on the City of Granbury's proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 annual operating budget. That's a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Vale makes a motion, Mr. Obadir seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. That passes 5-0. So we'll do this on September the 3rd. Okay. Now, we'll discuss the proposed 2024 property ad valorem tax rate for the City of Granbury and vote on the proposed tax rate not to exceed .3850 per 100 valuation to be placed on a future agenda, and we need to establish that agenda date, I assume. Okay. Mr. Kaufman, you have.
So we'll have Ava take us through this as well, but this is a vote. Your vote will show up in an article in the newspaper, A or nay, against adopting a rate not to exceed this amount. So I'll let Ms. Gregory talk you through the process of where this is in range of no new tax revenue or whatever we have to comply with the law, with the wording that we have related to rollback, what I call rollback votes or something like that. So we're well under all that, but go ahead, Ava.
Thank you, and I'll try not to be too boring with this, but there's a lot of information that was included on your staff report. There are many requirements that we have to meet, and per our charter and code, to follow before the tax rate and the budget can be adopted. And one of them is that we have to receive the appraised values, the certified appraised values by July 25th. And at this time, soon after, the chief appraiser calculates the no new revenue rate and the voter approval tax rate. And both of these tax rates, along with the proposed tax rate that you will be voting on, along with some that information has to be published in the paper no later than August 7th or as soon thereafter as possible. So the notice will be in the paper on the 10th, August 10th, this coming Saturday. As you've seen, we had received our certified values, and they are just right under $2.8 billion. Compared to last year, it's a 6% increase, or about $150 million valuation increase. From that, about $46 million is for new values added to the tax roll. The tax rates that were calculated are the no new revenue tax rate. The no new revenue tax rate is the tax rate that raises the same revenue, property tax revenue for the city when considering the same properties taxed both in 2023 and 2024. The no new revenue tax rate for the city is 39.37 cents per $100 valuation. The second tax rate that was calculated for the city is the voter approval tax rate. And per Senate Bill 2, it allows the cities or municipalities, counties to approve a voter approval tax rate adjusted for unused incremental rate. The unused incremental rate is a three-year rolling sum that is the difference between the actual adopted tax rate and the calculated voter approval tax rate. So if we adopt a tax rate that's under the voter approval tax rate, we get to bank that for 3 years and add it to the voter approval rate. For the city, the voter approval tax rate that will be published in the paper is 71.81 cents. And lastly, the cities under 30,000 population also calculate the de minimis rate, which is a rate that designed to give smaller cities or smaller taxing units the flexibility to raise $500,000 more than they have in the previous year. And that tax rate for our city is, let me see, I lost it. 44.85 cents. So these are the tax rates, along with the tax rate that you are going to be voting on, that will be published in the paper. The proposed budget, operating budget that you have was prepared based on the 38.5 cent tax rate. And I also wanted to mention, I didn't want to forget about this, because the proposed tax rate is less than the voter-approved tax rate and the no-new revenue rate. We actually do not have to have a tax rate hearing. We just have to have a public hearing to vote on the tax rate. So at this time, if you will, we need to place the proposed the proposed property tax rate on a future agenda item, and that's adjusted to be for September 3rd.
And I might add and reiterate that the 38.5 is below the no new revenue tax rate of 39.37 and some change. So we're getting down to thousandths of a cent. So we're proud. We're happy. We're satisfied that we can operate our city with that number. If you want to adopt a rate to exceed larger than that, now's the time to speak. Believe me, there's plenty of streets to pave and infrastructure to rebuild, so that's where we're at.
Discussion? Mr. Corrigan? Mr. Wadley?
So if we do 38.5, it's the same as last year and considerably lower than all these other options that we have.
Yes.
Correct? And all the other options that are available to us are higher than that. If we adopt the 38.5, then we stay at the same level as last year.
Yes,
Okay,
and we
thank
do
you.
not have to have a public hearing.
Mr. Overdeer, Mr. Vail? No? No comments, no questions? Okay. So this would be a motion to adopt the proposed 2024 property ad valorem tax rate for the city of Granbury not to exceed .3850 per 100,000 valuation, and it will be placed on a future agenda for adoption. Do we need to set the agenda date? That would be September 3rd as well? Okay. So the motion is to adopt the proposed 2024, the ad valorem tax rate for the city of Granbury, and approve the proposed tax rate not to exceed .3850 per 100,000 valuation, and to place the motion on the agenda, the Granbury City Council agenda of September the 3rd at 6 p.m. Right? Per 100 valuation.
So moved.
And place it on the agenda for adoption.
So moved.
September 3rd.
Second.
Okay. No other discussion? Okay. I have a motion, and I have a second. All in favor, in fact, it's not that. It's Mr. Corrigan, how do you say, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Corrigan says yay. Mr. Wadley?
Aye.
Aye. I'll spell it Y-A-Y. Jarrett says yay, and Vale?
Aye.
And Mr. Overdeer?
Aye.
I thought that was going to come in German. All right. That will pass with 5 ayes as recorded, right? We got unanimous. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Now we'll move to citizen comments not on the agenda, and I have a Lawrence LaHaye. Yes. Mr. LaHaye, if you will, just come up to the podium and give us your name and your address, and you wanted to speak on well, it's your choice. It's open mic. Go ahead.
My
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lawrence Slahay. I'm a merchant and building owner at 137 East Pearl Street, on the corner where the Corner Cafe used to be, and the Nutshell for 40 years before that. I'm the sixth generation boot shoe guy that's on the corner. I would like to request to be put on the agenda at the next meeting to discuss the merchant retail owner situation with the city, and to perhaps start a committee that represents the merchants better than only having the city make the decisions. I'd like to get on the agenda to have that discussion.
Just so I can be clear, can we talk tomorrow and I can get exactly what you're after on the phone? I don't have a problem talking to you and figuring out what goes on the agenda, but I really can't ask much questions because it's not allowed by law. But we can talk tomorrow.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
Okay. Other? I mean,
Okay.
We're here, you still have time?
I'm sorry?
I said, we're here, you still have time. If you have other comments, other deeds?
No, sir. That's it.
Very good.
That's all I was
Okay.
looking for.
Well, we appreciate you coming forward and appreciate the request. Thank
And
you.
your endurance tonight for this
Yes,
long
and
meeting.
your endurance. Thank you.
I just didn't know I needed a jacket. That's all.
Hell no.
Oh.
No.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to item number 9, and we will be going into executive session. So I now declare that the Granbury City Council is convened in open session. All members are present. The City Council will go into closed session pursuant to provisions of Texas Government Code in accordance with the authority contained in the following sections. Section 551071, consultation with attorney, pending or contemplated litigation. 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. And 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations. We are now in executive session. I now declare that the Granbury City Council reconvenes into open session. It is 10:55 p.m. We have a quorum, but there was no action taken in closed session, and all council members, with the exception of Councilman Rodriguez, are present. Do we have any other business? There being no further business, I announce the meeting adjourned.